everybody. So today we're going to be learning about how you can train your brain to respond versus react. Before we get going, it's really important that we understand that everybody is brainwashed. It just is what it is. Before the age of 7, children have the ability, you had the ability and I had the ability to download information rapidly so that we can learn about our environment quickly. Because before the age of 7, you have to know a lot of things. So the brain is designed to download information rapidly. So we have to understand that, yes, every single one of us is essentially brainwashed. What we learn to believe about society before the age of 7 becomes a blueprint. And below the veil of consciousness, we live our lives from this blueprint, unaware that we're unaware. Whatever we experienced in childhood becomes part of our download. If we were born to homes that were loving and nurturing and our basic needs were met and then some, then our brain doesn't have all this data for trauma drama. Our brain isn't highly reactive. Our brain isn't full of cortisol. Our body isn't full of cortisol and inflammation. We're not living in a heightened state of fight or flight. Our brain isn't full of memories that are associated to trauma experiences. Not only that, but our somatic body has to download the emotions that correlate to a trauma. When you grow up in a home that is full of love, then your brain doesn't have all of these issues associated with neural wiring that is designed to keep a body stuck in a heightened state, a reactive state, an on-guard state. So many of us that are stuck in a reactive mode have experienced childhood trauma. Now, that's not our fault, but if we want to ascend and if we want to grow and if we want to attract love and peace and have a calm mind, then we've got to learn to think before we react. We've got to learn to observe before we respond, and this is the way we bring about balance into our life. Research is also suggesting that trauma is generational, that what happened to our grandparents could affect us, like what happens in one life experience isn't enough. I mean, seriously, whatever. But I mean, these are things that we have to think about. So if we have traumatic childhoods, and our parents had traumatic childhoods, and our grandmothers and grandfathers had traumatic childhoods, we've got to also understand that part of our trauma drama and part of our reactivity may have to do with things that happened not even in our lifetime, that happened to our grandparents. That's really important to know because there are going to be times in our lives where we don't know why we feel the way we feel. And learning to accept that if we feel something, there's a reason, can help us immediately become less reactive. If you like this channel, if you like learning about self-love, codependency, narcissistic abuse, and how you can learn to find inner peace through the controlling of your mind, click the notification bell and the subscribe button. This way you'll be notified of all upcoming videos. So here are the 5 things that you can do to help teach your brain how to be less reactive and learn how to respond versus being triggered and feeling the need to react all the time. Number 1, where you find yourself the most emotional, understand that there's a reason. There is something that is tied to this experience that is triggering you. And so where there is drama, there is trauma. When we judge the selves for having a strong reaction, when we judge ourselves for having an emotional reaction, when we judge ourselves for being reactive, we're taking ourselves away from the brain's divine ability to understand the self. And that's where a lot of our power lies. The next time that you feel reactive, take some time, even if it's after the fact, right? Take some time and ask yourself, wow, what was that about? Why did I have such a strong reaction to this person? Because there is an answer. For those of us who are triggered by abandonment and we react to the people in our lives that abandon us or we feel abandoned by or rejected by, there's a reason. When we grow up in healthy homes and we feel nurtured and our brains have been wired to a point where social wiring has happened. The self-recognition area of the brain recognizes itself as a valid being that is enough. When people come in and out of our lives, we don't have such a strong reaction because we recognize that just because someone leaves us or abandons us or whatever, this does not mean that we are not enough. So if you react to things like that, take some time to ask yourself why, because there is a reason. Consider how an unmet childhood need or an unexperienced experience from childhood, traumatic experience, may have you reacting instead of responding. We don't want to go through life reacting to everything that happens outside of us because that implies that we're not operating out of choice. When we're not operating from choice, we're not living an empowered life. Number 2, find the space between your thoughts, or find the gap between your thoughts. When I was on the recovery path and I was beginning to realize how my mind ruminated, how my mind felt like a roller coaster and I could not get off. The thoughts never stopped. When I went to bed, they were racing. When I woke up, they were racing. I had sleepless nights. I had insomnia, anxiety, depression. I was always on edge. And I never realized that there was a better way. So living in a state of anxiety and constriction was my norm. Sadly, it was my norm. And I knew that in order to gain control over my mind and for me to be able to even reprogram my mind, I had to slow down the mental chatter. And so I remember that I grabbed my marble notebook and I began to slow down my thoughts. So let's say I had to take the car to go get inspected, right? I would practice with that stream of consciousness. I, space, have, space, to, space, get, space, the, space, car, space, inspected. In my own head, I would repeat the phrase, I, space, have to, space, get, space, the car, the, space, car, space, inspected. It was sort of like I was pulling the parachute on my thoughts and I was deliberately forcing them to slow down. Why? So that I could gain control over them. Without the space, it's like there is no space for you to think about what's going on. There is no space for you to respond to. It's just pure reactivity. In order for us to learn how to respond versus react, we have to learn to think about the way we think. And without space, we can't do that. So space between your thoughts helps slow down your mind so that you will get in the habit of having thoughts that you can catch and you can observe and you can think about rather than react to. Number 3, have you ever noticed how a surfboard stays above water? What do? Most of the time when we are in a reactive state, if we're in emotion, we jump into the ocean of our emotions, right? And we're not able to figure out exactly how we feel. It's like everything kind of just like funnels into depression or anger or frustration, or pure powerlessness. We can't really pull out an emotion like I was disappointed or I felt sad or I'm grieving or that was actually funny or that was joyful or I felt a little bit hopeful in that moment or I felt abandoned, I felt rejected, I felt minimized, I felt small, whatever it is. When we are not observing our emotions, it's like we're jumping into an ocean. And it's just like when you jump into an ocean, you can't pick out any particular droplet of water. It's the same thing with our emotion. When we don't learn to detach from our emotions, when we don't learn to observe our emotions, we are jumping into the ocean where it's impossible to pick out one droplet of water from another. Try this. The next time you have a really strong emotion, that's your clue to observe how you feel. So in other words, what you want to do is you want to think about your emotions like you would a surfboard on an ocean. And your job is not to fall off of the surfboard. It's not to fall into the water. So let's say you're angry. Put a surfboard in the ocean. Let's say you're frustrated. Put a surfboard in the ocean. Let's say you're happy. Put a surfboard in the ocean. Let's say you're frustrated. Put a surfboard in the ocean. And you were on the shore observing all of these surfboards which represent your emotions. Your job is purely to observe your emotions. What we want to do is we want to be able to control our reaction to emotion so our emotions don't control us. Most of us work that way, where our emotions are pulling us all over the place like a horse following a carrot. And we've got to learn to control our mind. If you feel angry, look at it, bow to it, honor it, observe it on whatever you do, remain emotionally detached from the emotion so that you can observe the emotion, and then from a higher state of awareness, think about what you want to do about how you feel. So you're observing these feelings, you're on the shore and you're observing these feelings that are on the surfboard. And from that space, you can see the space, right? Now you're learning to observe how you feel. And from that space, start asking yourself what you want. What is your goal? So whatever shows up in your experience, allow yourself to feel what you feel, and then ask yourself what you want to see happen in this particular dynamic. In that space, you can create boundaries around what's happening in your life, rather than just react to what's happening in your life. Number 4, diving headfirst into muddy water is like reactivity. You never know what you're going to get. You never know what's going to happen. You don't know what's below the surface. When we are reactive, chances are someone else is going to be reactive too. And that is that's like muddy water. So what we want to do is we want time for emotions to settle down. We want time for water to settle down. We want the dust to clear. We want the water to be clear before we dive in. So it's like a conversation. When we are angry and we're irritable and all this jazz and we're trying to have a conversation, it's like we've just jumped into dirty water. And the person that we're having an argument with, they're going to bring their dirty stuff into our water, right? So now we can't see what we're doing. We can't, you can't see anything in dirty water. And so that's what it's like to have a conversation when you're angry. You don't know what your goal is. You don't know what you're really trying to say. When we're triggered, it's like the amygdala becomes blinders, like blinders on a horse. We can't think straight. The prefrontal lobe goes offline. The part of our brain that is responsible for making rational decisions has been pushed offline. So we have to acknowledge, this is part of being emotionally intelligent as well. We have to acknowledge that when we are highly emotional, we're not thinking straight. So the best thing that we can do is not have conversations when we're angry. The best thing we can do is to accept how we feel our feelings, acknowledge how we feel, namaste, bow to how we feel, and take some time to think about the way we feel and to regroup until the amygdala calms down, until the emotional flashbacks kind of relax, and until we are able to think more clearly about the goals that we want to set, or the boundaries that need to be set, or the words that need to be set once we're calmed down. Number 5, in me, there you are, and in you, there I am. We all come from the same place. We all will return to the same place. We all got here the same way. Mommy and daddy, whoever they are, however it happened, your heart works just like my heart. Your eyes work just like my eyes. Your ears work just like my ears. Your fingernails work just like mine. My liver works just like yours. My kidneys work just like yours. You and I are more similar than we are different. And when we look out into this vast universe and we see the billions of people that occupy this planet, it can really feel like we're separate from one another. But nothing can be farther from the truth. There is a field that connects us all. And our energy field is interfacing and communicating with the field around us, yours and mine. What we want to try to remember is that everybody's dealing with their own trauma. Everybody has stuff. And so when we look at other people and we realize that they're just like us, that we're mirrors to one another, and we realize that their brain got programmed just like our brain got programmed, it's so much easier to understand that everybody has a trigger and everybody's just trying to get through a day. If you have a brain, you're dealing with programs just like I am. You have stuff in your background. So does the lady at Target. So does the man at the post office. So does the guy at Home Depot. Whatever. We all have stuff. When we learn to see consciously, we put some effort into thinking, wow, that person has stuff in their background. Wow, that person has stuff in their background. What that does for us is that helps us to develop empathy, not only for ourselves, but for other people. Because once we realize, really think about it, we're coming out of the ego. When I see you as someone who has trauma, and maybe that's why we don't get along, or my trauma is why we don't get along, or my reactivity is why we don't get along, or your reactivity is why we might not get along. And when I understand that that is related to stuff that happened to me as a child that's unresolved and I'm working on fixing, and maybe you're reacting to me because of trauma in your background, when I see that in you, right, then I step out of ego. And I'm coming from a higher state of awareness. And then my ego defense mechanisms go down. I don't have to be so reactive when I understand the world is full of pain. I develop more humility and I develop more empathy for my brothers and my sisters on planet Earth. So we all have stuff. We can see the challenges before us as opportunities to snap karmic chains. We have the ability to see that when we have a disagreement with someone, this is our opportunity to release ego and to release our attachments to the 3D world. The spirit that you are is attached to nothing. The physical self that we are, the ego self, the lower self, the personality self, now that's what's attached to what's going on outside of us. If you can use these 5 tips to help you respond versus react, you will discover that you have a lot more patience with yourself and a lot more patience with other people, and that you don't need to respond even or react to a lot of what's happening outside of you. It's a wonderful thing to try to do, because what it is you evolving past your ego. Because the ego is that aspect of us that feels like it has to respond to everything that's happening outside of us. So try to remember that when you're in a crowd, look at everybody around you. Every single person in the world has been wounded some way, somehow. And every single person in the world is dealing with some type of challenge. I know that because we're all spirits and we've all been come to evolve. And we evolve through pain and challenges. Maybe one day we won't have to evolve that way. We'll just evolve consciously. But for now, human beings are evolving through challenges, through suffering, and through pain. Understanding that the world is full of pain and that people are just trying to avoid more pain in the moment will help us become less reactive. At the end of the day, what the world needs is love. As hokey pokey as that sounds, it's true. We suffer from the need to react because somehow, some way, we were disconnected from love. And our goal is to journey back to love. And if we stay in a reactive state, then what we're doing is we're bounding ourselves to that type of karmic relationship that we have actually come to break free of. And so you being somebody who's willing to think before they react and to respond versus react is incredibly important when we think about raising consciousness. Learning to think about the way you think means that you're breaking through the program. It means you're learning to reprogram the subconscious mind. It means you are awakening. It means you are growing. It means you're spiraling up. It means your brain is healing from trauma. It means your amygdala is calming down. It means that you are learning to be a creator of your own reality. Dear ones, this is truly a spiritual journey and a spiritual tool. And I so hope you use it often and you perfect it so you can help yourself learn to master the way you deal with people and to deal with your emotions so that you can change your mind and change your life. My name is Lisa Romano. I am the Breakthrough Life Coach and best-selling author. I'm also an Insight Timer meditation teacher. I'm also the creator of the one and the only, the 12-week Breakthrough Coaching Program that helps people heal from codependency and narcissistic abuse and helps them gain control over their mind so they can journey back to the self. If you would like to learn more about me and my resources and the work that I do, you can reach out at www.lisaaromano.com. My name is Lisa A. Romano, and I am bowing to the absolute amazing light that is absolutely in you. Bye for now.